Hi, this is Mark Snyder with Worshipsong Band. I'm going to go over with you the capabilities of Worshipsong Band for pads and transitions. Transitions has been a key topic for some of these multi-track players recently, and we wanted to show you what we do and what we have always done really in some ways and some new stuff that we're adding. Um, so Worshipsong Band has had pads capability for like 2 years now. And the way that we designed the pad capability is really as follows. Um, if you look on my screen here, you'll see this pad icon, and next to it, you'll see where it says bridge pads. If I click that, you'll see that there's some pads there. There's like 4 sets of pads: atmosphere pads, bridge pads, base pads, water pads. And so what those are pads that you've put in your Worshipsong Band library. And a pad is a zip file with one pad of a particular family of pads in each key that can be played. So, like for instance, water pads, those are pads from a guy named Carl Vercade who has a site where he offers these pads. And in that pad set, there's one pad for each major, and in his case, each minor key um, in a zip file that's part of the library. So when you select water pads here, you're basically arming the system to play all the keys of that library. So you could put like core sound, worship tutorials, pads you make yourself, whatever. The real only limit for the number of pad banks is number one, the storage on your device, and number two, I think this GUI, the way it works, it would go up to about maybe 10 or 12 pad sets before you'd run out of space to be able to select them dynamically. Um, so if we find people are going higher than 10 pad sets, we could always change the way the GUI works. But for now, that's what we do. But anyway, so like right now I have water pads selected as the current pads that I want to play. Um, in G, well actually in G because that's the song that's loaded, and I'll go over that in a minute. This button here is the fade in button. So basically that just fades the pads in gently and they start playing. This volume slider controls the pads. The pad volume is independent of the volume of any tracks that are playing. The way pads work in Worshipsong Band is they can be played all by themselves like this. So if I wanted to just go to another key, I could just do that. Crossfade to a different key. So I'm crossfading to the C pad in Carl Vercade's set. Crossfading to the D pad. Back to the G pad. And I could also tie um, all the notes in the current key to my MIDI pedal if I want, so that I could use my MIDI pedal to select these and like do like a progression with my MIDI pedal or something like that. If I want to change the key, I long press, and now I'm in C instead, basically. And so now that would be my key, and my MIDI notes would take like the Nashville numbers for C, like 1, 4, basically those notes that are highlighted on the pad um, control there. The other thing I can do is I can fade to a different bank. So right now I've got water pads. I could fade to like these bridge pads instead. So now I've just switched to a different bank, and that's currently what's loaded. So everything I do now will be in that bridge pads bank until I fade to something else. This button fades the pads out. And so just using pads, I can pretty much just the pads and not even worrying about tracks or anything. I can pretty much do what I can do with those dedicated pad apps just using Worshipsong Band. But the real beauty of the way that we use pads is we've integrated these pads into the transition system that we use. The real reason we put these in the first place is to avoid dead space between songs. So just manually, for instance, let's go to the end of this song. What I could do just manually, what's always been there, is I could just fade the pads in. So, and the pads will go even when the track changes. So the way that Worshipsong Band works is when a song is in a set list, it automatically loads the next song for you when it reaches the end of the song. And so in this case, I've loaded the next song. My pads are still playing. They're playing in G, which was what was going on in the last song, but this next song is in B. So that's where this button comes into play. This is the crossfade button. What this does is it crossfades the pad to the pad of the new song when there's a mismatch. So basically, if I'm in G and the current song's in B, it will crossfade me from G to B automatically for me. And if I forget to do that, like let's say I keep the pads going and I hit play now and I'm in B, the program will also detect the fact that I've got a mismatch and it will switch my pads over to B automatically. I'll fade them here manually. So now I've got my B going.
Intro.
And now that's what the congregation will hear, the piano, and I can fade the pads out whenever I want. Or you can leave them run through the song if you want. It's really up to you.
Who, oh Lord, could save themselves?
So that's the manual pad transition capability. But what you might want to do is so you don't have to hit these buttons all the time, either with your foot or on the touchscreen. We've added ways to automate this. And so the way we do that is you'll notice this menu over here. This is the set list menu. This basically shows you what's in your set. So if you click it, I've got 10,000 reasons you alone can rescue. If I click this side menu that says presentation, I call up what we call the set list entry editing window. And this is all stuff that goes with your set that is really kind of external to the audio. So your set list entry always stores your audio mixes and your planned jumping and everything else in your song. But it also has these things which kind of govern what happens between songs. And so for pads, what we added was basically these two beat counts here. What these two beat counts do is the first beat count, you notice it says after start, fade beats. So what that says is that after a certain number of beats of the song, the program is going to fade the pads out for you. It's going to remember to click that fade out button for you so you don't have to, basically. And it'll fade the pads out. You'll be in your song. Then you'll play to the end of the song, and then before the end, however many beats before the end of the song, the fade in beats are going to come in, which is the ones over on the right. And basically that says bring up the pads this many beats before the end of the song. So you can script using these two things. You can script the pads to fade out and fade in for you, and script the whole transition of your set. There's also this fade in pads on load. What that basically does is whenever that song loads automatically, if this is checked, it's going to automatically click that crossfade fade button for you. So you're going to get the new key when the song loads, essentially. This auto start next song can also be used. So basically what would happen there is you would just, if you used all of this stuff together, you'd fade in the pads at the end of the song, you'd fade in pads on load, you'd auto start next song, however many beats you're into it, the pads would fade out, and you can just let the whole set run by itself, essentially, with pads going in between. And so the other control that's in here is this bank. And this bank is the same thing I showed you before, except it's saved on that set list entry. So like if you want to switch banks between songs, like if you want to go from water pads in one song to bridge pads in the next song, when they fade in, that's what this does for you. It basically scripts a click on that bank selector when those pads are faded in for that song. It'll switch to those. So anyway, those are the I think that's a good stopping point for this discussion. That's how you can use the pads and how you can use them as part of a plan to manage the transitions. Actually, there is one more thing I will show you that I forgot, and that's this. I have in here a click-only song. Okay, so what a click-only song is basically a metronome at a beat. And there's a key here, but the key actually doesn't matter. So what I can do with that is I can just start my metronome, and it'll just go for as long as I want. I've divided up the metronome, and I'll show you why I divided that up in a minute. It's real easy to do with our song editor. But what you can do now is you can also just play the pads while the click is going. So let's say I've got this click going and I wanted to just kind of do some progressions and have the guitarist play some rhythms or play some lead or something like that. I could just do that right here. So I can just say like, so basically I can use a click, just a bare click and pads together and create a prayer time or whatever I want with that. And the reason I divided the click up was so that rather than just hitting stop on the click, I could click on the last section here, select it like I would any other song jump. And what I'll basically do is I'll jump to the end of that click and do whatever the transition is. So it gives me a way to transition out of the click using the song jumping capability instead of just stopping it. And that's why I divided up the click into even sections like that. So anyway, you can, to kind of recap, you can use pads for just playing pads, bringing in banks, just triggering them however you want. You can use them in between your songs.
Intro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And you can use them with clicks. So I had scripted directly going into this other song at the end of that click in my set, just to show how you go into a click and then into
Verse.
a song basically.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So that's pads and transitions in Worshipsong Band.